All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we're going to talk about the Giants again. Just some comments that Lawrence Taylor had to say before the ceremony at halftime that the Giants did for their top 100 players. And Lawrence Taylor, by the way, got one of the biggest ovations when I was at the game. Got one of the biggest ovations when they were honoring their history, their players. So that was really cool. But Carl Banks and Bob Papa, they do a podcast, the radio broadcasters for the Giants. Of course, Carl Banks was a former player before my time. It would have been nice to have seen guys like Lawrence Taylor and Carl Banks play, but that was way before my time. Now that doesn't mean that I didn't see a couple of Super Bowls, but maybe I would have liked to have seen LT and Banks play. But this is what Carl Banks had to say recently on their podcast. He said, "I could tell you when we were lining up to be introduced as the top 100 players, a guy who never really comments on games because he doesn't watch many of them was Lawrence Taylor. He looked at me, and this is a true story, folks." That's what he said. I'm not saying that. This is a true story, folks. If you want to know what we, the 100 greatest Giants, were thinking at halftime, Lawrence looked at me at halftime and said, "Carl, I could pick 22 of us right now and go out and play better than these guys. We'd be in this game." The youngest guy in that line was probably 50 years old. Lawrence Taylor looked at me and said, "I can get 22 of us right now and go out there right now." And he said that they would win. They would beat them up. I'm going to say the children version of that, of his statement. And this is a courtesy of an article in the New York Post. I'm trying to see if Banks said anything else. He also said to start your season off looking the way you did on both sides of the ball, you look like you're stuck in 2023. Yeah, because he also talked about, this is where I brought the weight class thing up from before. Banks said that the Vikings are a team that's in the Giants weight class. Because, Sam Darnold is their quarterback. So, yeah, they got a good defense. They got the best receiver in football in Justin Jefferson. But this was a game that myself and many Giant fans thought, hey, they can maybe win this game. This is one of the games that, maybe they could win. And that was just not the case. And he also commented on the Kayvon Thibodeau post-game interview, and he said, when you have players in the locker room say they did exactly what we thought they were going to do, that's even more insulting. That's what you gave the fans. It's just not good enough. It's not. That was a poor performance. And it started off the sack of Sam Darnold, the fumble recovery, but when they only got 3 instead of punching it in for 7, did not feel good about the Giants' chances after that. Really didn't. And then only things got worse because, they could have been off the field, but then there was that pass interference call, and it was like this, and it was a big chunk. It was like a 40-yard penalty that set the Vikings up. Once Aaron Jones scored that touchdown, I'm like, yep, this is going to be a long day. Pretty much. Not good, but it is very telling when you got former players saying things like that, and especially Lawrence Taylor, who probably the greatest Giant of all time, is the greatest Giant of all time. And you got him saying something like that. And listen, I sent a voice message to my friends. I was like, Eli, can you go out there and play, please? Now, obviously I was joking, but let's be realistic. If Eli went out there and played behind the offensive line, because the offensive line I didn't think was great, and him being a statue, it would have been a long day for Eli if he was out there playing quarterback. But yeah, I would love to see JPP and Justin Tuck and Osi Umenyiora and LT and Carl Banks and and Hakeem Nicks and Victor Cruz and Eli and Brandon Jacobs and Bradshaw, all those guys, go out there and win us a game, please. Please. Because these guys can't do it. Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns, yeah, keep those guys out there. Malik Neighbors, yeah, keep him out there. But a lot of those guys, yeah, take a back seat. Let the other Giants come in and play. Yeah, it's sad when you have Lawrence Taylor saying that. Because if Lawrence Taylor is saying something like that, that's a problem. And this is something else that I said, John Mara, as the owner, the decisions that he has made since they let Tom Coughlin go, and now and Tom Coughlin's time was up. But it's the fact that they have not been able to find good replacements for him. And they haven't really gotten it right at GM either. Because they got rid of Jerry Reese. They bring in Dave Gettleman. Well, you still had Reese and McAdoo. That didn't work. Reese was gone. McAdoo was gone. Then you bring in Pat Shurmur and Dave Gettleman. That doesn't work. You get rid of Shurmur, you still have Joe Judge. Joe Judge and Gettleman are gone. Now you bring in Joe Shane and Brian Daboll. They make the playoffs their very first year, and you thought, all right, the Giants are turning it around. But they've gone backwards. They have gone backwards. And I have kept saying, you know what, I still think Daboll and Shane could get it right. But the thing that's very concerning when it comes to Shane, one of the things that's very concerning is that you took Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau at the 5 and the 7 in that draft. And now Thibodeau is not a bad player. I don't think he's a bad player. But he has not lived up to his potential. Evan Neal looks like a bust. And that's a problem. Because we could say all we want about Dave Gettleman, but you drafted Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal looks like a bust. And those are guys you picked in the top 10 in the draft a couple years ago. That's not a good look. It's not a good look. And Brian Daboll, I don't know what's going on, because you watch some of these post-game interviews, and it seems like he's reverting to the responses that Giant fans were accustomed to seeing with McAdoo and Pat Shurmur. I don't know. It's not good. It's not looking good right now. This is a very important game that the Giants have coming up against the Commanders, because, again, if they lose this game, the fan base is going to continue to lose it even more, because that's a team that they always beat. But it really is amazing how one game, like if they played against the 49ers and that happened, then you'd be like, all right, well, what did we expect? The 49ers are the best. The Vikings, although they have a good roster, the Giants should have been able to compete in this game. And they just flat out didn't as the game went on. So that's why you got the reactions that you did. That's why I reacted the way I did, and will continue to do so. But, it's just not a good look. And again, I think this falls to the feet of John Mara. John Mara has not made good decisions. And, again, was in hot water kind of because of, unretiring Ray Flaherty's jersey and giving it to Malik Neighbors. Again, not blaming Malik Neighbors, but why are you unretiring a number? And look, I never saw Ray Flaherty play. But you don't unretire a number. That's sacred. I don't know. That's just my opinion. But, again, some people will have it differently. But when a number is retired, it's retired. You don't bring that back again. But that's just what they decided to do. But Neighbors looked good. Neighbors was at least one of the bright spots. But it's just, the Giants have been a mess for a long time. And there's been a few outliers, 2016 and 2022. But then what happens after those seasons? They go right back to square one again. They went from making the playoffs in 2016 to then being one of the worst teams in the NFL and having one of the worst seasons in their franchise history. And then you make the playoffs in 2022 and you think, this team's going to be even better. They get smoked by Dallas, losing 40-0, and that was it. They were more competitive towards the end of the year, and they finished 6-11. And the way this season started off could be heading towards the same kind of year, which I already had them at 7 wins. But you finish with an even worse record than you did last year. Brian Daboll's probably gone. And maybe JioSaavn is gone too. I don't know. I this is what I think. I think that, if they finish with a really bad record, it's likely Daboll's gone. But on the other hand, I just don't know, because they gave Daniel Jones that contract, but Daniel Jones was not their guy when they first got there. Like, there's guys in college that they could try to get. You got Shedeur Sanders, you got Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers from Texas. Those are your 3 quarterbacks right there that, are going to be the top 3 guys coming out of college. Once we get to, the NFL draft. Already we're talking about the NFL draft, but those could be potential fits. Well, I don't know if I want to say fits, but potential, because we don't know how they would be with the Giants, but those could be who the Giants try to get if they finish with a bad record. And if they keep Brian Daboll and JioSaavn, I think this would be their last opportunity. Go and get your guy out of the draft, and if that doesn't work, then you're gone. So, I don't know. There are so many different things that can happen. Because then on the other hand, it's like, if you let go of Daboll, Bill Belichick's out there, reunite with him. So, I don't know. It's a mess. It's a mess. The Giants are a mess. And that's who I really felt bad for, is the players. You're honoring the Giants, you're honoring your history, and that's the performance you put on with those uniforms. Now, I kept saying jokingly, I wanted to go to this game to see those uniforms in action. And I kept making jokes like, yeah, they're gonna look they're gonna play bad. I was making jokes all around. And it ended up happening. Just like last year when I was making jokes about, hey, the Giants are getting hyped up this offseason, but then they're gonna get killed by Dallas. And that's what happened. That's what happened. And it occurred to me, I have never seen the Giants win a football game when I'm there. Every single Giant game that I've been to, excluding the preseason, I have never seen the Giants win a game. Never. Every time I've been there. But I'm usually there for different reasons. Like, they played Brady, they played Rodgers. When they played the Cowboys, yeah, but the Brady and Rodgers games, I wanted to see them play Brady and Rodgers. So, yeah, I'm not surprised they lost. But, against Dallas, well, I'm not surprised they lost that game either because Dallas owns them. But still, I thought they had a chance to win on Sunday. It just didn't happen. Didn't happen. So, we'll see what happens this week against Washington. But we're going to take our final break here. Let me know what you guys think, though, about what we just talked about. When we come back, we'll talk about the Steelers. What should they do at the quarterback position moving forward? I know I talked about it a little bit, but we'll talk about it again here to conclude the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.